Let's take a look at open world driving games and what's happened to them as the years have gone on. Of course, driving games aren't anything new. We've had games like Gran Turismo and other games even earlier than that for many, many years. Lots of people will have really fond memories of running that on their original PlayStation. But you couldn't go too wild, of course, because you had a track, you had to stay on that track. And that was partly down to the limitations of the hardware. Just look at the crowd, for example. Not many discernible figures in there. Then came along the idea that it was actually a lot of fun to sometimes get off the track. And along came something like Crazy Taxi. Now, this was released for the PlayStation 2 in 2001. And instead of having to go a specific way down effectively a specific corridor, it was a little more real world, and you could go off the track, you could bash things, you could smash some of the street furniture, people would jump out of your way, and it proved to be a huge hit. Also key in this genre, but often overlooked, was the 2006 Test Drive Unlimited. I remember playing this really keenly on my Xbox 360. The graphics were good and you had an entire Hawaiian island to explore. There were some limits as to where you could go, but it felt much more sandboxy, and although the core of the game were timed races, you could start to have fun. And in fact, part of the lure of the game was actually just looking around somewhere where for most of us in the UK we had never been, just exploring the island and seeing what we could find and trying to get that achievement where we had driven down every single road. On a similar note, this led to the 2008 version of Burnout Paradise. Again, a huge hit on the Xbox 360 and other platforms as well. We could do what we want around Paradise City. And in fact, here we saw significant game elements based on not staying on the roads, but going off track and seeing what we could find. Again, very, very large amounts of fun to be had here. And we had to wait another 4 years until we eventually got Forza Horizon. And this really is a spiritual successor to those other games. And when it came out, it was a bit of a revelation. It felt in some respects a lot like Burnout Paradise, but it had excellent graphics, and although there were guardrails in a lot of places, again it felt relatively free roaming. Now, behind all of this, we do have Grand Theft Auto, and I will do a separate video all about Grand Theft Auto and the sandbox world of that particular game. And of course, that was also hugely influential, but that's for another day. So here we have Forza Horizon, and you got to drive around a map that was based in North America, around Colorado. Lots of racing games of that time tended to use this sort of scenery. Again, partly down to hardware constraints of the time. It was a hit, and inevitably it spawned Forza Horizon 2 with a much bigger map and, dare I say, a slightly more exotic location of the south of France. Some really gorgeous locations here. And of course, as time went on and consoles got more powerful, maps got bigger. So when we got to Forza Horizon 3, we really had a map that would take your breath away in places. This was Australia, and it was done incredibly well. Surfers Paradise, for example, when you see sometimes Surfers Paradise on television, you recognise it because you've driven around it in this game. It's probably not perfect. I've never been to Surfers Paradise, but it was pretty good. And the other thing that we had here was the inclusion of lots of different types of scenery. So up in the northwest, we've got the dry outback. We've also then down in the southeast got the rainforest, and we've got the coastal areas that Australia is also known for as well. There were some fantastic fun features in here, like the sand dunes and the shipwrecks in the eastern part. So the developers really went to town on some of the things you could do in Forza Horizon 3. And in fact, the maps and the environments were so good that really no one thought they could top that for Forza Horizon 4. But inevitably, the sequel had to come. And when it was revealed that the location was going to be the United Kingdom, some people were a bit disappointed. I was not one of them. A lot of people abroad don't sometimes know about the different parts and the beautiful places there are in the UK. And the map was huge. We've got lots of real world places like Edinburgh, like Derwent Water, like Bamber Castle. And really the beauty spots and the landmarks are too numerous to mention here. But this seemed to bring together all of the best elements of all of the previous Forza Horizon games. Not just the size and the complexity of the map, but all of the activities, the races, the challenging rivals, the campaign, the multiplayer modes, the stories, the exploration. It was just fun. And this was released in 2018, although there are still plenty of people that play it regularly even now. And one thing the Forza series also managed to capitalise on was the increasing popularity of DLC, and both Forza Horizon 3 and 4 had very notable DLC. So rather than look at the map, let's take a trip to the United Kingdom and Forza Horizon 4. So here we are just outside Bamber Castle. One of the things I like about Forza Horizon 4 is they've got all the detail of the UK right. You see the road signs, the markings. Sometimes that's not always the case. You'll get American developers that put yellow lines in the middle of the road and things like that, whereas true to form we can see lots of double yellow lines. Now here's a rival, not a particular rival, but I've pressed my button to challenge them, and I'm in an ad hoc race now. I've got 1.9 kilometres it would appear. I'm not really holding out much hope for them in that strange Volkswagen Beetle that looks more at home on dunes than it does on the road, so needless to say I've overtaken them pretty quickly. If you're wondering, I'm in a Ford Raptor F-150, so that's why it's doing pretty well. It's quite a nice sort of all-purpose vehicle for this type of terrain. So I've got road, but if I go off road, which I'm just about to do now by accident, or was it on purpose? Who knows? It's quite happy to cope with all of that. I'm not entirely convinced that Ford Raptors actually slide that well, although I haven't driven one, so I wouldn't know. There we are, elated Marrow. I'm afraid I managed to beat you. Alright, we're in Edinburgh now, and you can see, I mean, it just looks fantastic, doesn't it? Now, some things can't be driven through, so we can go through the barriers, but we can't go over those little concrete bollards. I'm sure in real life, of course, those barriers put up rather more resistance, and this is one of the great things about the Forza Horizon series in general, and this title in particular. They get the mix between simulation and arcade play just right. So it's good enough that you can feel the difference between the vehicles and they handle differently, but at the same time I can go through stuff that would normally just write off a car. So I'm going to have a bit of a wrecking spree in central Edinburgh. So, oh look, a bus stop. Oh dear, an ex-bus stop. Litter bins are a particular favourite, and is that a pavementised spot? Yes it is. The wheelie bins go flying. Some people, see, there's no people around, so that's the other thing. You don't have to feel bad about running anyone over. It's all pure property damage, as if that's any better. Well, I suppose it's slightly better than injuring people, but probably not good in the real world nonetheless. So there we are, that was a nice little spree. Plenty of traffic around in Edinburgh. Oh dear, there's been a bit of a fender bender, as I think they would say the other side of the Atlantic. Let's go the wrong way up a one-way street through a couple of wheelie bins just for good measure. So it really does capture the essence of where we are. I think there's always a few more red telephone boxes than there normally are. I suspect that's to keep the American market happy, and also you can smash into those as well. Oh look, another cafe. Outside dining? Not anymore. You know, going for a bus stop and those things you put your bikes against, normally that would write off a car. But like I say, for balance, absolutely perfect. There are also these little stories that you get. So this is the world's fastest rentals. I'm not that good at this one, unfortunately.
Remember I said I'd get Ferrari in? I thought you could duck out for a drive in the country, you know, See how fast it goes. And it's a 2014 FXXK, so probably pretty fast.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that on the pretty fast. Well, let's see. Oh, there's a tram in the way. No, it's gone the other way. The acceleration on this, well, if only I could actually feel the acceleration, but off we go. We've got to get up to 110 miles an hour. You probably work that out from the very large writing on the screen. Not in my Raptor anymore, and I can tell. Nice straight road in Edinburgh. There's lots of different UK locations, of course, but we're currently in an urban environment, so... Oh dear, now, just hit a wall. That was a bit of a faux pas. Again, I would have just completely written that car off in real life, but no, we're carrying on. In fact, it looks like I've hardly sustained any damage at all. Why? Because this game is all about fun. It's not about being a realistic simulator. Let's face it. Could you really drive an actual car at 160, 170 miles an hour with a gamepad? Would that be possible and not just spin off the road at the first corner? I suspect it's probably not possible. So the fun, realism, proportions are absolutely spot on in this game. So if you do this, then there are more chapters for you to play. Of course, you're going to get some in-game credits and all of that malarkey. But I think this is all going to go horribly wrong for me. So let's have a look at something else. One of the other things we can do are slightly more traditional races. So it's not a case of, oh, it's a real world racing game and so therefore we can't have the traditional let's go around some laps. Indeed we can. So this is a street race. A little bit of argy-bargy on the first turn there. One of the great things, again, it's not too simmy, if that is a word. I do enjoy using other vehicles to help get round corners. So if I take the inside line, I can just use the Punisher there, there we are, just to ease round that corner. Apparently, got a little thing saying clean racing. I'm not sure the Punisher would agree. You have to go through those little checkpoint flags as well. It's easy to overcook some of these corners actually in a big heavy Raptor. Like I say, you can tell the difference between the vehicles, but it's pretty good. It's given me comparable vehicles to race against. As long as you go reasonably near those flags, you can actually go through the little checkpoint flag rather than inside it, as you just saw. Yeah, slightly overcooked that corner, unfortunately, but let's continue. Oh, almost overcooked that one as well. Nice long straight here. So this, of course, is much more reminiscent of your normal driving game, and it's got plenty of this sort of events for you to take place in. As you can see, I seem to have the line on the road on, the racing line. It's quite handy, of course. I can see that I need to just slow down a little bit for this corner and it will change colour so that I know I'm going at an appropriate speed to get round that corner okay. Okay, where are we going now? See, I'm going to take the inside line again. I'm going to use that one. I didn't quite get to use the other vehicle to get me around that corner that time, and it's sort of backfired on me, unfortunately. Which side? We'll go right. Well, it's not the best side because it's not a nice wide turn then. So I lost a little bit of speed then. But you get the idea. There are other types of races. Here's a cross-country event, and this, I think, really sums up some of the fun about Forza Horizon 4. I do apologise for my character's somewhat unconventional clothing, I have to say. This is unfortunately a conversation I have with one of my friends. Could we have the most outrageous and inappropriate clothing? Not in any sinister way, but just a bit of fun there. And I think the gold lame shorts and the gold vest, that's pretty ridiculous. So off we go anyway. Again, I'm going through the checkpoint flag. But you can really appreciate now the open world nature of this. Now we can't really go too far off piste because we've got our checkpoints again. One of the other things that makes this fun, you see I've just hit a wall. I can press Y, it's going to rewind for me, and I can rewind a number of times until I get to a point that I'm happy to resume from. I think this time I'm going to go left rather than right. There we go. So I'm happy to resume and the race continues. It means if I make one silly mistake, it doesn't wipe out the whole race. Certainly not in campaign mode in single player mode like this. Clearly, if I'm multiplayer, I can't do that. You can't suddenly stop everybody playing a game. So it only really works. It only works at all in single player. But it's a nice feature that just keeps the fun factor. Again, you know, sometimes people forget that games are supposed to be fun, or certainly this type of game. Alright, maybe not the Resident Evils and horror games, but this sort of game. Up over the railway track. I think I've actually overtook someone there while I was in the air. But you can see that it's looking nice. This, you know, this sort of scenery here, this is classic English spring scenery, isn't it? You're watching it actually in 1080p. It was actually recorded on an Xbox Series X in 4K. But just for the purposes of the YouTube channel and keeping everything nice for that, I've got the video at 1080p and not in HDR, so that it should be nice for everybody. There we go. There's another thing, of course, would just completely wipe out a vehicle going through a dry stone wall. I'm pretty sure, and I confess I've never tried it, there's another one. I'm pretty sure that they don't do that in real life. I think you probably come to a very sudden halt, but it's fun. Oh, look, a nice wooden fence. I'm causing quite a lot of carnage here, actually, going through all of these dry stone walls. Or we'll miss the little animal feeder there. Yeah, they're still behind me. They're not nipping at my heels, but they're close enough that perhaps I don't want to make any mistakes. Oh, through that farmer's field. The farmer will be absolutely livid, of course. I'm a little bit off the racing line as shown, although all the grass is a bit too long here to see the racing line, but there we go. A wind farm in the background. Are the turbines actually turning? I think they might be. Across the motorway. Again, those barriers giving way like they don't do in real life. Oh, some nice little things there. Nice little acknowledgement of crash landings. More walls. I think here's a wall. Through we go. Oh, nice. Almost as if it was banked intentionally there just to help me around the corner. My progress up in the top left, 98% now. And this looks like fun straight. Anyone near me? No, they're still a little bit behind. And victory. There we go. First place. So there's a lot to do. And we've got all sorts of things that we can do in the menus. There's also DLC. We've got Fortune Island, which was one of the DLCs, and Lego Speed Champions. My apologies for not opening the brick challenges. They also have challenges that they put on every now and again. You can play online. That is enormous fun. You can get creative, and you could actually just while away hours doing that. So there is an awful lot. It's probably the definitive racing game of the moment, I'm going to dare to say. It is available now on Xbox One and Xbox Series S and X. So I hope you enjoyed that little look at Forza Horizon 4. If you liked it and you want more classic gaming, then please subscribe to my channel. You can click the button in the channel itself, or better still, you can use the link that is on this video now. Thanks for watching. See you later.